Hi, Gemma, and welcome to Entrepreneurcast. It's such a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be speaking to you.
So, Gemma, before we get started with the business side of things, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about who are you outside of your business and what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
It's a good question because sometimes I have to ask myself that question. Like, am I someone outside of my business or am I just my business? I think that in a way, my business does kind of shape my lifestyle and to some degree my personality as well. So I would have to say that just as I am in my business, I can be quite intense outside of it. But then, a lot of aspects of my business are about having fun and being playful and childlike and those sorts of things. So I definitely have those characteristics outside of my business as well. And yeah, I guess anything that I'm not doing involving the business, I really like to, when I'm getting distance from it, make that distance outside and exploring and just kind of pushing the boundaries. So it is very tricky to say that I can completely separate myself from it because a lot of the attitudes that I've developed in my business really carry through in the rest of my life. When I'm thinking about changing and evolving the business, it requires lots of exploring and lots of being brave. And those are definitely things that I bring to whatever I'm doing in my personal life as well. So one of the things that I tend to do is to go to places that I haven't been before and really go off exploring to new pastures and new cultures and those sorts of things. And lots of my friends will say, wow, you're so brave to go by yourself. I can't believe you did that. But I think I've built up the mental muscles and the emotional muscles to feel very comfortable doing those things because of the experiences that I've had in my business.
Okay, so tell us about your business. What is it that you do and what inspired you to start it?
So there's a few different prongs to my business in terms of what I do. So if I could encompass it all, I would say that I work in the area of self-development, and that involves some products around personal development, typically hypnotherapy products. Some of it involves coaching, so I have clients that I work with on a one-to-one basis. Some of it is training. So I teach NLP and hypnotherapy, both in a sort of corporate environment and also to a group of people called NLP4KIDS. And NLP4KIDS is a company that I created. It's a franchise company, and I train people to work with children specifically using NLP. And then I also mentor the NLP4KIDS team, and I mentor them from a perspective of helping them to grow and develop their franchise, but also from a sort of more coaching perspective in regards to the children and families that they might be working with. Sometimes they may have some challenges knowing which techniques or processes or advice to give. And so I mentor them in that capacity as well. So I have my fingers in a few different pies, I think it would be fair to say.
Well, I know you from NLP for kids perspective.
Yeah.
That's what I know you for. So I think that's very exciting and very different sort of business because, in NLP, usually people more kind of target grown-ups and then you work
Yes.
with kids. So I think that's pretty amazing and exciting, really. Uh,
Thank you very much.
so, Gemma, what would you say your day-to-day typical day looks like?
It varies wildly. I think probably one of the reasons why it varies wildly is because I actually quite enjoy having that variety. My background prior to running the businesses that I have now is nursery nursing. So I'm a qualified nursery nurse. I used to work in private daycare. I used to nanny for children as well. And in a way, as much as I loved working with children, all of those jobs were terrible for me because you rely so much on a routine. Routine is great for children. Like, children really need routine. It helps them to feel secure, but it wasn't good for me. So as soon as I'd got to grips with the routine, I would get very bored and want to do something different. And this trend follows through now that I have my own business. But fortunately, I'm in a position now where I don't have to stick to the routine. So, there is, of course, a routine of sorts. We have a routine for the training throughout the year and what will be delivered. And there will be certain routines that I have to follow, like checking my emails, which I really don't enjoy very much. But I do have a lot of flexibility as well. So on a day-to-day, it could be that I start the day by checking some emails. I may have a couple of coaching clients to see, or maybe some mentoring sessions with the NLP4KIDS team. Sometimes part of my job is to just make sure that all of our resources are up to date and relevant, that we're still sort of following the right legislation with things like safeguarding for children and those sorts of things. So I can be quite glued to my computer screen for days and days at times. Other times I might be going out to visit schools to speak to special needs coordinators or head teachers and find out what gaps they might have in terms of assisting children with their mental well-being and emotional well-being, and how we may be able to help them. Sometimes I am writing bids to be able to get funding for the not-for-profit part of our organisation, which helps us go into schools without the schools having to pay for a practitioner out of their budget. And that's quite a new thing that we've been doing. And essentially, when I'm bid writing, for me, I look at it as if I'm writing stories, and I write stories about the work that we do and how the work that we do could help support children. And hopefully someone will read that story and like it enough to give us some money so that we can pay the practitioner to go and deliver the work. So that's quite a big part of my job now, which has only really started to happen very recently because the not-for-profit side is a new thing. Sometimes my job is very technical and it requires me to fix problems with websites and WordPress and hosting and all those sorts of things. And there's a sort of plus side and a negative side to that because when I started my companies, I didn't have any money really. So I had to do all of the work myself. And that forced me to learn a lot of things that probably many other business owners wouldn't know about. So I know things about coding and hosting and all of those sorts of things I've learned along the way as a result of really having to figure out how to solve the problems in the cheapest possible way. And just now I realized there's an issue with a form on our website and it's to do with our hosting. I have to speak to them. So these sorts of things can crop up, usually at completely the wrong moment. And then my job can really take quite a technical turn and I can be doing some almost, deep IT type skills. So it varies very wildly. Sometimes it's very people focused. Sometimes it's very technology focused. Sometimes it's incredibly creative. I'm writing a new education brochure at the moment, and that I quite enjoy because I get to play with, images and make the document look pretty. And sometimes I might be doing interviews like this and podcasts and radio shows and all sorts of things. So it's hugely varied, which can sometimes be stressful because the variety is so big, it can seem there's so many things to get done. But actually, I probably wouldn't have it any other way because from having spent my earlier life, doing the routine thing whilst I was looking after children and young people, I know that doesn't float my boat. So, yeah, it's just very, very varied.
Amazing. So Gemma, you know how throughout our entrepreneurial and business journey, we come across a lot of challenges. What would you say was your greatest challenge and how did you manage to overcome it?
Well, I think there's been a few sort of pivotal moments over the years, and I think the one challenge that had the biggest impact, and it was a long-term impact that it had, was I made a change to the NLP4KIDS franchise. It started out as a franchise, and then partway through, I wasn't marketing it very successfully. And I got some advice from someone who I thought was more skilled at business than I was. So I valued their opinion. And they suggested that I did away with the license part of the franchise. So I would essentially offer the NLP4KIDS training, and those people would have all of the perks of the ongoing license, but not pay for an ongoing license fee. And it meant that I sold lots and lots of packages because it was such a good deal. But then after a couple of years, it was very difficult to make money from the people that I was supporting. And I know that there's always for some people, they think, oh, it's quite an uncomfortable thing talking about making money when you're in the making a difference business. But from my perspective, what was happening is I was investing lots of hours into people that I was mentoring and supporting and coaching them through their business and not getting paid for it. And there comes a point when you just need to pay your rent. And so it put an awful lot of pressure on me, and I put an awful lot of pressure on myself, and didn't really know how I was going to resolve that issue. And it's taken a long time to build up the courage to really bring back the franchise and do it in a different way, a much more successful way. And also then to phase out some of the people who had taken on this franchise with all the benefits of a franchise, but who were not making a longer term investment into it. And it meant that for those people, they didn't really have any incentive to work because it wasn't costing them any money to be there. So I had a lot of people who were, just costing me money, but not making me any, and not making themselves any either. And I had to go through a period of phasing some of those people out. And that was very uncomfortable because I had good relationships with many of them on a personal level, but then having to sit down with them and say, you're not doing the work and you're costing me money by being here doing nothing. So that's been a real challenge, and some aspects of that challenge continue, but on the whole, the change has been, whilst it was very uncomfortable, completely the right thing to do, and has taken me back on the right path. But it was certainly, if it was if I had in a business context the opportunity to sort of go back and speak to Gemma from the past and give her some advice, that's the thing I would go back and change and say, don't follow that person's advice. It was bad advice.
Wow, I know how it feels when you follow somebody's advice who, you fully trust and you think they know better than you do. And
Yeah.
then it just doesn't work out and you realize that, it was a bad decision. So I
But I
hear
think,
you.
fairness to them, they thought they were giving me good advice,
Yeah.
and possibly for them in their business, it would have been the right thing. I think it's, I'm not upset with them. I'm more upset with myself that my gut feeling was not to do what they were saying. And I went against my own gut feeling. And that's the thing that to this day, still, I haven't quite forgiven myself for that. I've forgiven them because they just gave me advice. It was my decision to take it. And I took that decision in my heart, knowing it wasn't the right thing. And almost kind of giving my power of trust to someone else instead of keeping it within myself. That was really what the mistake was about.
So on the bright side of things,
Yes.
what would you say was your greatest success?
Oh gosh, there's been there's been a few high points, and one of the benefits of doing something like this is it makes me pause for a minute and actually think about them, because you get so busy in the day to day. Even when you have quite a big win, you very quickly move on to the next thing. So I would say the two big things that spring to mind are coming up for almost 3 years ago now. I invested in property for the business, and I bought it's essentially a shop which is on the high street. And so we have our big NLP for Kids logo in the window, and it's our office, but it's put NLP and NLP for Kids literally on the high street. And we now get people who walk past and stop and stare, and then they come in and say, "Can you help me?" Or, "I have a child and I don't know what to do." And that's been really fantastic, because previously people would only find out about us from using Google, and now they know who we are, and we've developed brand awareness, albeit, you know, in our local area where our head office is, but it's had quite a powerful impact for our practitioners as well, and I think it's helped to inspire them quite a lot. And I remember shortly after we'd moved in, I was helping out in a school. I had a contract in a school for a year delivering NLP for Kids. And maybe about 3 or 4 sessions in with these children, one of them said to me, "Miss Bailey, that picture that you have on your T-shirt that says NLP for Kids, I've seen that on a really big window in the town. What was it doing there?" And I said, "Well, that's my shop." And he went, "Well, I never." And it was the funniest thing, but it was also, you know, it was just great, because I thought, wow, people are really starting to notice us now. And he was probably only about 7 or 8. So I thought that's fabulous that he's linked those two things together, and he's realized that we're the people that come into his school. So that was a really good thing. And then I think the other one was much more recent, and that was setting up Superheroes, which is my not-for-profit company. And Superheroes, it has a few different purposes, but one of the purposes is to underpin the work of the NLP for Kids practitioners. And it allows us to access sources of funding, so that we're able to send the practitioners into school without the schools having to pay from their budget for the practitioner to deliver a service for up to a year. And this was, it wasn't something where I had to be brave. I've had times in the past in the business where I've really had to be brave and take a leap of faith. This wasn't like that, because I was in a relatively secure position already. It was more that I just didn't know if it was going to work. And I suppose what I didn't know was whether I had what it took to be able to write these quite large applications for funding. Because I knew that there are people who are professional bid writers, like there are people who do that for a job, and that is not a job I had ever done. And there was a chance that, you know, we would have to get someone else to do it, and that I just may not have the required skills or knowledge to be able to do it successfully. And what I hadn't really accounted for is that when you write a bid, there's a time delay. And sometimes it's maybe up to 6 months before you find out whether or not that bid was successful. So the first one I did, I was kind of anxious, because I didn't want to have to wait all of that time to find out if it had been successful or not before I would go ahead and write another one. But then I didn't want to invest loads of time writing another one if actually I hadn't been very good the first time around. So I had a period of time of thinking, oh, it's risky if I keep doing more of them, but I've been doing them badly. It would all have been a tremendous waste of time, because each one takes maybe, well, at least 2 days really to write well. So I did the first one, and I waited and waited and waited, and then I had an opportunity to do a second one, and I got someone else to do it, and I got a professional bid writer to do it, because I just thought I don't want to, you know, invest that time and then find out that the first one had been unsuccessful. And I got the one back from the bid writer and I read it and I thought, well, my one was better than that. So then I felt a bit more good about it. And then I found out that the one that I'd written had been successful. And then I got more confident and I started to do more of them. And so between when I got started, which was maybe October last year, and now I've written 17 bids in total. Some of them are still processing at the moment, but we've had 7 back as successful so far. So that's been a really big achievement because that's allowed me to kind of revolutionize the way in which we were working with schools. And that's great for our practitioners as well because it gives them so much more security. But I guess the knock-on effect that I hadn't really accounted for was how much more attractive that makes our business model now to other people who were thinking about doing something like this, but maybe hadn't been brave enough because they didn't feel that it could offer them the financial security that they were looking for. And now it seems so much more viable and financially secure to people. It's meant that the inquiries we've had have been much more exciting, that our potential to take on more practitioners has grown tremendously. We had a sales day on Saturday. It's a discovery day, we refer to it as. And I made, we only had 6 people there, but I made 4 sales. So that's a really good percentage conversion, and hopefully they were all lovely people, so hopefully many of those will go on to become licensed NLP for Kids practitioners. And then the ripple effect of that is that there will be more of our people in schools helping more children, and then the effects of that for them and their families and their communities and their future becomes so much brighter. So, you know, sometimes just a tiny change, quite a small shift in a different direction can have quite big, important, positive ramifications.
So Gemma, you're doing quite a lot of stuff, and that requires a lot of ideas. So where would you say you come up with the best ideas?
Whenever I'm not in my office, seems to be the case. Yeah, I think I read an article a long time ago about creative distance, and I've subsequently written more articles about it myself. And I think the saying, when someone has a problem and they can't see how to solve it, we very often say, you can't see the wood for the trees. And I think that that applies to problems, but I think that also applies to creativity. And I think that when you try to, you know, sort of, okay, I'm going to go to the office today and I'm going to have ideas today, you can't force it to work like that. And actually, as soon as you get distance on it, you get creative. So we call that creative distancing. And for me, it works really well to have physical distance. So it's not just about, I need to think about something else for a few minutes. I need to physically move myself to a different location. And my home is very attached to my work. So I tend not to get, you know, really good ideas when I'm at home. I sometimes get a few good ideas in the shower. But for me, if I travel and I, you know, maybe I go to somebody's conference, I'll always get great ideas in the middle of somebody else's conference because they'll say things that maybe trigger ideas for me. Or if I go away on holiday, which doesn't happen nearly enough, or it didn't, and then I've bought a property in Bulgaria, which is where I'm speaking to you from now. And so when I come here, I get distance from the business and I come here to relax, but then I end up with the ideas just start generating. So, but I need to be careful because I don't want this place to become an extension of work and that I come here and work all the time, because then the ideas will stop flowing. So I think, you know, for that reason, traveling generally is a good way to get ideas.
So Gemma, you know, throughout the years, you know, while we growing and going through our journey, we get inspired by different people. Who are your inspirations, or do you have any personal heroes?
I think there's probably been different people at different times. I would say one person that has continued to inspire me, and not in the sense that I know with this particular person, when I say his name, you're going to know exactly who it is. And some people can become almost a bit of a junkie for his material and advice. So I've got a lot of inspiration from Tony Robbins in the past. And I don't necessarily seek out new stuff from him, because I've probably seen it all already anyway. But whenever I come across something like maybe a new interview or, just a quote or something, I would never pass it by, because I think what I like about him, aside from obviously he's incredibly energetic, is that what he says actually fits with real life. You can really make sense of it in a day-to-day situation, and I think that makes him seem closer to your everyday person, which I always like. And then it's sort of beyond the NLP world. I've had some kind of business people that I've been interested in the past. So there's an entrepreneur called Karen Brady. I really like her ethics and her attitudes in business. And I would like to think I sort of draw some parallels in terms of, how she thinks from a business perspective. And just really any kind of strong women that have gone on to achieve in a big way, I find very inspiring. So people like Oprah, for example, I quite like sort of hearing about their backstory and personal circumstances, because very often you find that, many of those people have overcome quite big adversities to achieve the successes that they've gone on to achieve. And I think that makes them seem all the greater for having gone on and achieved it in spite of, perhaps some quite challenging circumstances. And I can really associate with that on a personal level as well.
So, Gemma, out of your experience and wisdom in the life of business, or maybe even perhaps NLP, what would be your top 3 tips and strategies for the listener today?
Well, I I sometimes get a bit frustrated when I hear from business people who are all about the kind of not get rich quick necessarily, but more that kind of set your business up in such a way that you can just live on a beach and it will run itself kind of thing. Because that hasn't been my experience, but also I think that there is something rewarding about working hard. So I think, certainly one thing I would have to say is work hard, because it does pay off. It just doesn't pay off immediately. And that's why I think a lot of people get maybe disillusioned or give up too soon. And it's so sad. Sometimes you see people giving up when you can see they're on the cusp of breaking through to the next level of success, but they just haven't, they haven't stuck at it for long enough. So I think that there is no shaming in working hard. There's, sometimes this idea that if you're having to work hard in your business, you're not doing it properly. But I don't actually subscribe to that idea myself. And I feel almost that I quite like going to bed at night tired enough because I've worked hard that day. Like, I like that feeling, knowing that I'm going to get to sleep easily that night because I really gave it my all that day. And it makes me feel like I've lived my life to its fullest by doing that. So work hard would be one thing. And I think very closely tying in with that is persistence, because you do have to keep going and keep going. It requires an awful lot of commitment to stick at something even when it looks like it's not going to pay off, either from a financial or, a sort of personal perspective, even when you have other people that might say to you, maybe you should just give up now. Maybe you should stop. Maybe you're, taking it too far, all those sorts of things. So I think persistence is hugely important. And if there was a third thing, it would be like actually really love it, you know, love what you're doing, or at the very least, it should really fundamentally strike a chord and really mean something to you. Because when you are working hard and you are being persistent, you're going to need to get that energy from somewhere. And if you absolutely love what you're doing, or you at the very least know that you, like in your soul, that you are doing good and it's changing the world in some way, then that will give you the fuel that you need to keep going so that you get that success on the other side of it. So that would be the third crucial thing that you need.
Definitely. Gemma, throughout your journey, did you come across any kind of resources you could recommend that could make perhaps business easier to run, or could be helpful?
Yeah, I suppose there's been a few different things in terms of sort of from the business perspective. Anything that automates what you do, frees up your time, and is hugely helpful. So, and there's some kind of freebie stuff and low level stuff that you can look into. And then I can also tell you about some of the pricier, but perhaps a little bit more clever stuff as well. So things like MailChimp, for example, for email as an emailing service, they have a plan that starts out for free, and it enables you to sort of accumulate your database, your audience, and email them all in one go in very professional looking, decent looking emails. And then there is a relatively low cost service that they offer where you can start automating things. And scheduling emails to go out to people, embedding web forms into your website so that people can sign up. It automatically emails them whatever they may have requested, and then it will keep sending them emails in a sequence if you do so desire. So those sorts of things really help to cut down on your time and kind of managing people on an individual basis. I now use a system called Infusionsoft, which is a bit more clever, and we've got all of our merchant banking linked up to that so that people can pay for stuff online, and it takes care of the whole thing. It requires investment of time initially because you have to set up forms and, the thank you pages and all those sorts of things. But essentially, you could have someone go to your website, enter their contact details, send them an email straight afterwards offering them something. They like it, they buy it, it will do the transaction, it will send them a receipt, it will put the money into the bank. And so that, that kind of stuff makes life an awful lot easier in business. So anything like that where it's got automation attached to it, I would absolutely recommend that people explore it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Gemma, a lot of people I talk to, they say that at some point in life they came across a book that changed their life. Did you have such a book, and what was it?
Oh, good question. Did I have such a book? I've had a few books that have been sort of changed my direction a little bit or changed my focus. When I first got into NLP and hypnotherapy, I revisited Awaken the Giant Within several times over, which is Tony Robbins' book, obviously. But actually, I've had a book which I downloaded as an audio book, and this was much more recent, in the last 12 months or so. And I just came across it at a point when I was perhaps slipping into not negativity, but maybe a little bit of, I was maybe getting a bit cynical. I think that would be fair to say. So I was still succeeding and working hard and, achieving from what I was doing. But I think my attitude was just coming off track a little bit because I'd had some stuff on a personal level where family members becoming ill and those sorts of things and people passing away. And I think when you get like a bad run, our brains are designed to go, what's the pattern here? And so probably on quite an unconscious level, my brain started to go, okay, bad stuff is happening. we're in a pattern, this is going to continue now, and getting all dramatic. And so I sort of needed something to help snap me out of it. And this book did. And it's called The Luck Factor, and it's by Dr. Richard Wiseman. And I got it on audiobook, and I listened to it whilst I was decorating. And I really just got it for sort of background noise. And the thing was, there were a couple of things in there that made me go, oh, okay. And I just had those little light bulb moments happening, or, maybe more like fairy lights. And it just started to shift my attitude in a good way. And one of the key things that I got from that book was, because I run my business myself, it's all my own thing. So I can very easily slip into my own little world where I keep my head down and I do my work. And, and it can sometimes mean that I'm not sort of making an effort to interact with people, especially when I work quite long hours at times as well. And one of the things that I got from The Luck Factor was how, as a result of an actual study that they did, they found that people who interacted with more people became more lucky. And so I thought, well, listen up, Bailey, this might be worth actually experimenting with. So I made a conscious effort to talk to people that I would not ordinarily talk to. Like if I was in a queue, I would just talk to the person in front of me. Or if I sat down in a cafe, I would talk to the person next to me. And it was quite uncomfortable because I just, I like to just do my thing and mind my own business. But I was coming back from Bulgaria, and I had a couple that sat next to me on the plane, and I'd done what I normally do, opened up the laptop, put my headphones in. So I'm like, okay, I'm in my world. And then there came a point when I needed to use the bathroom. So I put the laptop away, and I ended up, as a result of saying, can I squeeze past to go to the bathroom, having a wonderful conversation with these people. And I thought, well, when I get back from the bathroom, I'm not going to put the laptop back on and go back into my zone. I'm going to keep the conversation going. And as a result of that conversation, I then ended up swapping numbers with them, swapping email addresses. When I next came out to Bulgaria, they invited me over for a barbecue. As a result of going to that barbecue, they then introduced me to their neighbors. And I've now got like a whole network of friends here in Bulgaria that I wouldn't have otherwise had if I'd not been a bit braver about speaking to people that I didn't know, which was the advice that I got from that book.
Fantastic. I love that. Uh, so Gemma, you're creating your own luck. You're doing really well with your business. You've opened up a franchise. It's all going great. What is next for you? Where are you going? What's your next big goal, dream? And if there is someone today who is listening and could potentially help you get there, who would it be?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. All right, well, the next big goal, see, I'm a bit funny about goals because in the past when I've set them, there's always been something that's come along and not necessarily scuppered it or made it go badly wrong, but just different things have happened. So I've learned over the years to be really, really flexible about how I set my goals. Because 3 years ago, I was thinking, okay, I need to start thinking about getting a bigger office so we could maybe employ another member of staff. And I ended up buying a building. And that wasn't really the plan, but that was how it worked out. So for that reason, I know I need to be flexible with my goal setting to a degree. I think that the most important things for me in the business now are to focus on the growth of the NLP4KIDS team. And one of the things we haven't done yet, which I've explored to an extent but never really pushed forward enough, is building that team overseas. And we get a good few inquiries from Australia in particular, but also New Zealand, sometimes America. And a good few in Europe as well. But I suppose there's the challenge of the sort of the language transition in various different areas of Europe. Whereas with Australia, my thinking is, well, they do at least speak the same language, which makes life a little bit easier. And I've never been there. So that's a good reason to expand into Australia, because I haven't been there. And so I would like to have the not just the experience of setting something up overseas, but also the potential of doing that just means that that ripple effect of what we're doing and what we're delivering reaches that much wider. And for me, with NLP for Kids in particular, more so than the other companies that I have, NLP for Kids is the one that has the potential to create a legacy. And what I mean by that is, there will come a time in the past when I am no more walking this earth, but I would like to think that some of what I'm doing now will continue beyond that time. And maybe even continue into a generation beyond that and beyond that. And so I think that if I can get this reaching and impacting in as many different corners of the earth as possible, then the chances of that legacy fulfilling itself will be much greater. So I suppose in terms of who I need to meet to help that happen, it would be really people who are like-minded in some way, who have either connections or are based in those parts of the world, who are either potential NLP for Kids franchisees, or might know of an audience of people who would potentially be interested in something like this.
Amazing. I love your vision. That's
Thank you.
great. So, Gemma, we are coming towards the end of the show, but before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else you would like to share with us or advise on?
Yeah, I suppose there's some useful things to direct people towards. So on the NLP for Kids website, which is NLP numerical for kids, KIDS.org, there is a products page. There is a load of freebie stuff on there. So the practitioners have worked very hard and created things like anxiety guides for children, tips on how to transition from primary to secondary school. So there's a load of freebie stuff on there that people should go and look at. There's also the NLP for Kids book, which was released last year, which is called Stop Anxiety and Grow Confidence, and that's available on Amazon. And then with regards to the more sort of grown-up NLP side of things, the best place to go to is the People Building website, which is peoplebuilding.co.uk. There are podcasts available on there. Again, those are free. There is a huge catalogue of articles on a range of different topics and how NLP can help support people in those subject areas. And there's a load of hypnosis products as well, both scripts for hypnotherapists and audios for people who need that sort of therapeutic intervention but perhaps haven't got access to a therapist as such, or the funds to go and see one. So the hypnotherapy audios are really useful for that, and those are also available in iTunes as well.
Amazing. And if people want to get in touch with you directly, do they still go through the website, or is there any other way?
They can go through the website. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can catch up with me on LinkedIn as well. That's another good place to touch base.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Gemma. It's been a pleasure and delight to see you again, and I really hope to see you soon again in London.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure doing it.